What's up, everyone? It's Matt Jinks here, and today I'm going to be going over drum technique in general. Mostly, I'm going to start with from a beginner standpoint, like right at the beginning. You know, I've covered this stuff before, but I just want to go over it again because I've come up with a few more tricks and just better ways of explaining things. So that's where I'm going to start. I'll do match and traditional grip. I don't play match very much. I prefer the traditional grip. But for those of you match players, you know, that's what a good form match grip looks like. Of course, you're a tenor drummer in a drum line or bass drummer, you're going to be doing match grip. To start off with, you want to make sure you have a good angle on your sticks, 45 or 90. Take it like that. And if you have a pad like this pad here is square, and lots of the like the real full pads are, you know, octagon shaped, and there's a lot of nice round pads coming out these days. So if you have trouble with, you know, your arms falling in, or, you know, keeping your position, you might want to go with a pad that has, you know, squared off edges so that you can always judge the distance. Like when I play on this one, I know it's about 1.5 inches or 2 between the stick right here and the corner of the pad for the tip of my stick to play in the center. So gotta watch out for that. It's the easiest thing to see because your sticks, you know, in the corners just stand out right there. All right, now as far as your hands go, see here, I get a little closer. If I just move my hand up straight, you see the stick's at an angle in my hand because of the length of your fingers. Okay, it's not a matter of trying to do this or that. It's just a comfortable position. Put your hand up, and you know, I'd have to, if I wanted to put my fingers in different positions, it would be hard. Naturally, they just go like that. I don't know, maybe I've been playing drums forever, but if I wanted to do that, keep them straight, you know, that's uncomfortable. Just bring your hand up straight like that. That is natural. Do that old drum sound. So make sure all your fingertips are wrapped around the stick. See that there? All right, nothing hanging off. You don't want anything hanging off like that, because each finger has its own little job to do and its position on the stick. Okay, keeping the angle of the stick, either pulling the back of the stick up or pushing the front down. Okay, and you see when that pivot, the wrist is kind of, I like to think of the wrist as really the end of the forearm rather than its own entity, so to speak. Lots of people see that. Watch the step there. Lots of people say it's all about your wrist movement, but really, your wrist is just like a stopping point for your forearm. Okay, and then the body of your hand hangs out from there. All right, so you see that. You have your elbow sticking out. Try to make sure you have your elbow out away from you. Don't let your elbow come in too close. Try to physically hold it out just a little bit, just so you can feel that your forearm is on a slight down angle, maybe, I don't know, 20 degrees or so. And then when we hit your wrist, your hand, the body of your hand hangs down from there. Now you should be able to see the top of your hand when you're looking down, like the whole top of your hand. You don't want to look down and see like half of it or 2/3 of it. You want to see the whole top of your hand. That knuckle, your pinky knuckle, should be sticking out plainly, and you should be able to see the butt end of the stick coming out the side of your hand. Okay. Now, as you can see, if you understand the simple fact that when the front of the stick goes down, the back of the stick comes up, you know, that will help your motion and helping the fingers to understand what they're supposed to do. Like if you squeeze the back of the stick up with the 3 fingertips under the stick, number 2, 3, and 4, I just number them that way. I start at the first finger. Well, of course, I just call it the first finger. And then 2, 3, and 4, they're under the stick. As you can see, I'll come closer again, trying not to trip over my bass drum this time. The first finger isn't all the way under the stick. It just kind of tucks against the side. And this bone right here, this middle section of your first finger, that's kind of straight down to the ground. Okay, and then the tip just tucks against the stick. Everything else is under the stick. Okay, so you're squeezing the stick into your hand. All right. During double strokes, during the single strokes, you pretty much want to keep the stick against the palm of your hand. Against the underside, the palm of your hand, all the time. You don't want to do too many letting go of the stick unless you're playing fast singles like that. There we go. I missed a couple. All right, so you understand that. Now, your first finger and your thumb, they stay together. You don't want to have a gap in between there like that. You can stick something in there. You want to keep that seam closed so that there's just a little V shape kind of sort of where your first finger and your thumb come together. All right? Okay. So you notice the knuckles look nice and square. All right, depending on what you're doing, how fast you're going. That's the basic set position. Okay, so you just start right here. Well, actually, you start right here, the tip of the stick, less than 1 inch off the surface, going down at this angle. You have your first finger and your thumb on top of the stick. You don't want to have your thumb on the side of the stick because if you push down with it, it's going to slide off the bottom. So you want to keep it slightly on the top part of that curve of the stick. Okay, don't have it exactly on the side because it will slide off. All right, so you got that seam together. I want to try to make sure your first finger right here is straight in this section, like straight with the angle of your arm, not like straight forward, because that'll make you do that. And you don't want to do that too much because that kind of pinches up the area back here and the muscles back there. Okay? So, all right, you got your V here. Seam is together. And you notice the second finger angle is going down. The second section of it is going down, and the third is further down like that. And the little finger is almost going straight down to the ground like the second section on your first finger. All right, so they look like steps. You want to think of them like steps. Okay, you want to make sure they look like that all the time. And that way, you always get a nice, solid pivot motion going. And the pivot point, everybody says your wrist is your pivot point. Actually, the pivot point is the end of that seam of your first finger and your thumb. Because when your hand goes down, your forearm comes up. Okay? So your wrist can't be a pivot point because it's at the end of your forearm and it's going up when your forearm goes up. So the pivot point is actually that seam right there, the end of that seam. Okay? Now you're basically pushing with the first 2 knuckles, first finger and thumb. That's helping the top of the stick to go down, and your middle finger, your second finger, actually does, the tip of it does help squeeze up. And lots of people only use their second finger, they don't use the back 2. But you want to make sure the back 2 are squeezing the back of the stick up when the top part of your second finger and your first finger and your thumb are pushing the front of it down. Okay, it'll give you a nice solid sound and a consistent sound. You want to make sure you get the same sound every time. Okay, now for traditional grip, there's a whole bunch of variations of this, but for the most part, you want your thumb and your first finger to stay together. You put your thumb in that second knuckle, a little closer here, that second knuckle right there. Okay, that's where you want your thumb to be. Okay, and it kind of aims up. Mine doesn't aim up that far because I got part of it chopped off. Did not tickle. All right, and your second finger is kind of just leaning against the stick, not leaning, but just pressing close just to make sure the stick doesn't go out that way. All right, and the stick rests on the nail of your third finger. Okay, got one right there. Okay, see that? And that helps the stick go up. That's your rebound finger, okay? And you can see my little finger is tucked way down. Not a lot of people do that, but a lot of people do. It actually helps your turn on some patterns. If you're, just like when the top of the stick, front of the stick goes down, the back comes up over here, when the back of the stick comes up, like your first finger and your thumb pushing down, and kind of this meaty part back here, pushing the back of the stick up, your little finger, by doing that, is helping the back part of your hand under the stick turn. Okay? So everything is just going like that really fast. You know, it just does that. You want to make sure your hand and your wrist, and really your forearm too, part of it, turns. You know, Tristan grip is more of a turn. You do when you're playing hard and, you know, playing like that, you are using arm, but for the most part, you're just turning. You just want to think of turn and control the rebound. Okay? Like the right hand or match grip, you want to keep the stick against your hand. So over here, you want to make sure that your first finger and your thumb and the back part under here, the meaty part of your hand, keep in contact with the stick at all times. Your spring finger, number 3, depending on what you're playing, for the most part, it stays against the stick at all times. Your second finger, I don't know, I like to keep it against the stick all the time just because you have everything in contact over here and you already have your little finger not in contact over here. So already your sound's going to be off. It's moving, the stick's being forced in a different kind of way, so it's going to have a different tone. That's why it's hard to get match stick sound when you're playing traditional grip. But other than that, you know, and lots of times, just naturally, if you're not doing, if you don't need it over here, your second finger kind of taps off of the stick back and forth. So you don't have a lot of points of contact over here. So in lots of ways, traditional grip is harder than match grip. Okay, because number one, your brain's got to think of 2 different techniques at the same time. But there's less contact, less muscle on the stick making it move than your right hand. So if you're right-handed, you naturally want to back off a little bit on the power and the strength that you use so that your left hand has a good shot of balancing out your sound. Okay? Okay. Where else? Oh, and your stick should also be on a slight down angle. You don't want them to be flat like that. Thanks. Number one, it looks weird, and you want to think of playing into the surfaces. That's a whole other topic, but generally you want to imagine the surface like an inch lower than it actually is. All right, and that will help you put a little more oomph behind your movements. Okay. All right. So, with all that in mind, work on that. Rewind the video over and over and over and over again, and get all those points into your head. Okay. So when you're looking down at your hands, you're thinking about that all the time. You know, and just keep looking up and down. Just keep moving your eyes up and down to make sure everything's staying where it should be. Okay? And make sure you're playing in the same spot as well. Okay, so until next time, keep drumming.